consider one substantive item of business only. My name is Councillor Paul Follows, Leader of the Council and Chair of this meeting of the Executive. The meeting is being held in the Council Chamber at the Berries in Godalming and is being webcast live. The agenda was published on Tuesday, the 2nd of December 2025. Barry, could I have any apologies, please?
It'll be me.
Or Katie, indeed. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes.
It's Councillor Kika Mirrlees has given her apologies.
And I think we do indeed have everyone else. Declarations of interest, anyone? Good, seeing none. Item 3, local government reorganisation, the establishment of a West Surrey joint committee. I will be proposing this. I believe I have a seconder.
Very happy to second, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So good evening, everyone. The paper you have before you this evening is the next step of the journey of local government reorganisation. Next year, the currently draft structural change order will go before Parliament, and that will legally create the formal joint committees and formalise a number of the other legal and technical elements that precede the creation of the new East and West Surrey unitary authorities. MHCLG has told us both verbally and in writing, this is all Surrey leaders, that they expect all authorities involved in this process to collaborate, not just through the formal bit of the process, but in advance of this happening. And the creation of informal versions of those joint committees is one of the most straightforward ways of achieving that. Now, the word informal causes some confusion because we mean only informal in relation to the version that is created by the legal order itself next year. The informal version of these committees are, in fact, actually very formal indeed, and their establishment requires a number of things to be done by each of the constituent authorities. The first is standing orders, the second is delegations of various sorts, and of course then nominations to that joint committee. And the various papers that we have before us over the course of this evening do various parts of that process. The Western Committee is made up of 12 members. 6 from the County Council and 6 from the districts and boroughs in the West. At the County Council, because there is more than one nomination, they are subject to the proportionality laws and requirements, and so those 6 are proportional to the membership of the County Council in the West. And nominees to the county positions had to be from divisions in the West. Now, I've been asked by a number of members if I will just outline the county nominees, so you're aware of them, and those nominations are in fact now formal because the County Council passed those yesterday morning. So in West Surrey, there are 3 Conservatives, Matt Furness of the Shalford Division, Mark Newty of the Chertsey Division, and Denise Turner-Stewart of the Staines and Staines South and Ashford West Division. The Liberal Democrats have nominated and now approved Lance Spencer of the Goldsworth East and Horsell Village division, which is in Woking, and of Liz Townsend of Cranley and Newhurst, obviously in the room. And the Residents Association Independence Group has nominated Catherine Powell of Farnham North, who, again, many of us also know. This evening, aligned with many of the other districts and boroughs, and in fact, I think all of them, the leaders of each district and boroughs will be nominating themselves to the district and borough seat that each council has to nominate. The primary justification for that is that, of course, all the Surrey leaders have been in all of the meetings that have got us to this point. I've been party to all of the negotiations with MHCLG, and realistically, it would be very difficult, I believe, at this point for anybody to pick that up. All the county council nominees and all of the district and borough nominees will have substitutes. We are not quite sure at this point how many of these meetings will take place. And this is still all being worked through. I think Waverley is the 3rd council to be approving this. The county did it yesterday morning. Guildford did it yesterday evening, I think. And I think there's a couple of us tonight, us and Surrey Heath, who are doing it tonight. I think the last one is Tandridge on the 18th of December. It is likely the first meeting of these joint committees will be in the first week or so of January. That is also subject to some discussion over the course of the next couple of weeks. One other element that I wanted to flag, particularly as I've got ONS members, chairs and joint ONS individuals in the room, the transition money that is required to do this process is at the moment clocking in at £35 million, a figure I suspect that will end up being quite a light sum, and most of the leaders think it's going to be a bit more than that when it comes in. 80% of that figure is being dealt with by the County Council. with the remaining 20% being dealt with by the districts and boroughs. As you can imagine, that has taxed some districts and boroughs more than others to put forward their share. And we will also get to the point where, bearing in mind each district and borough and the county will be asking officers that are already doing a day job to keep the lights on and our services running in our districts and the county. They will be having to do work to run these transitionary programs and man the implementation team. I believe that there does need to be some level of scrutiny, bearing in mind we are talking about millions of pounds of public money. I have been pushing quite heavily for the creation of these joint committees because it does have a role in the scrutinising of those funds. I raise this here, though, because I also believe it's probably the right of the joint ONS and even the sovereign ONS to also consider how that public money is being spent and who it's being spent by, because it is rather a lot. Particularly as I also think it's not unlikely that we will get calls to increase that funding over the next year. I'm going to ask Susan Sale if she would just also say a couple of words as well, because we've had a couple of comments about the delegation section of what's in these papers. And of course, if there's anything else you want to add, Susan, if I've missed anything or incorrectly given a report to exec, please do shout.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think there have been a couple of queries about the delegation recommendations within the report, which is paragraph 2.1.7 and 2.2.6, which is where members this evening are being asked to delegate executive and non-executive functions to the West Surrey Joint Committee. It is only limited to functions relating to the purposes and remit of the Joint Committee. So the terms of reference are attached as Appendix B to the report, and you will see that the terms of reference include matters such as developing an implementation plan and supporting with drafting a code of conduct, preparing for appointments for interim officers, and preparing a draft constitution for the Shadow Council. So what you're being asked to delegate is simply executive and non-executive functions that relate to the scope of the new joint committee, no wider than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Do I have any questions or comments from members of the executive? Victoria?
Nothing hugely to add, except that providing the recommendations are agreed by the executive and council tonight, I would like to wish the leader well in this role on the joint committees, and I can't think of a better advocate for our borough in these discussions.
Thank you. And I should also just advise that the way that these are intended to be structured, they will effectively be a standard type of council meeting that you'd be used to engaging with. It is foreseeable that members will be able to register questions, they will be able to register to speak, and they will of course be able to attend. They will also be webcast. The mechanics of all of this are still being worked out, of course, including things like where the meetings are going to be, and the host authority for running the democratic services process, etc. All of this is still being discussed. And as you can imagine, is a sort of microcosm of the wider, where is the unitary going to be based and where is it going to have a council chamber debate that we'll likely be having over the next year or so. Keeping in mind the other point that everything these joint committees do running up to the elections and therefore the election of the shadow authority, it is quite possible that the new shadow authority could effectively throw out almost everything that that joint committee might propose. But the purpose of this is to ensure that on day one, the new authority is acting safe and legally in all of the duties that it has to undertake. There are, I think, also some questions that will be resolved in the near future about some of the finances, things like disaggregation of services, and a number of other very key points. Ordinarily, in such a meeting, I would invite other members of the council to speak, but as we are about to have an extraordinary council that is effectively discussing the same topic and all members will be open to debate anyway, I'm in this case not going to do that. Are there any further speakers before I move to the recommendations? In which case, seeing none, the recommendations 2.11 through to 2.17 are before you. And yes, indeed. In fact, which one is that? 3. So I'm going to take everything except 213 as before we. So that's all of the recommendations in the exec paper, with the exception of 213. Can I have all those in favour? And as 213 relates to me personally, as I'm the nominee for the seat, I will abstain on that vote and ask all members to show if they're in favour of 2.13. Thank you very much indeed, including those not on the executive voted. That's greatly appreciated too. I think that is therefore the end of the business. There's no need to move into part 2, and therefore the extraordinary executive is closed.